This is the Cyberpunk YouTube channel. I was originally going to name it Cyberpunk 2030, but some asshole decided to buy up all the web domains and take all the social media handles so that they could probably try to sell them back to me at some point in the future. But the joke's on you, buddy, because I'm going to be changing the channel name again. That's right. We don't have to stick to Cyberpunk 2030. There's no rule saying that. So we're going to change the name again. And I apologize to all my viewers who are going to be put out by that. Trust me, there's going to be much worse things that you're going to be put out by than some random's YouTube channel handle. I first want to send a shout out to all the people struggling in California with one of the worst wildfire seasons in history. The biggest wildfire in history is currently burning right now. At the time of this video, it is not the biggest fire in history in the state of California, but it most certainly will likely grow to that extent, because the last I checked, it was around 350,000 acres, or is that hectares? I can't quite remember. But the biggest one in history was a little over 400,000 hectares burned, or acres. I know there's a big difference. So chances are, with only 90%, just only 10% contained, I should say, this is going to burn for a while. And the conditions that have made it so ripe for wildfires are going to continue for a while. We're talking straight 32 and above all week next week. Death Valley is hotter than hell, between 47 and 52 degrees. I better talk in Fahrenheit here. Sorry, I don't have the Fahrenheit figures in front of me for all my American listeners. But the shit is hitting the fan in California. First, they had the pandemic. Then they had those crazy Santa Monica riots. Then they had this. And I'm sure this is not the end of 2020. There's just a lot of shit going down right now, and that's probably why everybody's leaving California. They just can't handle it. I'm not sure if you guys have seen images of these wildfires from space. You can do a time-lapse satellite image of these wildfires from space, and it is frightening. I've never seen wildfires engulf an entire state like that. I mean, obviously we've seen it in the last few years, but it just seems like this is just crazy, because this came out of nowhere. Remember, 4 days ago, this wasn't news. And in the span of 4 days, it's grown to be one of the biggest fires in California's history. And it probably will, I won't say probably, it will ultimately end up to be one of California's biggest fires in their history. That's how fast the shit can hit the fan. So you need to be at the ready at all times. And all of these crises compound on one another and make the other worse. So the wildfires are going to make the economic situation worse. The economic situation is going to make the pandemic worse, and so on and so forth. Anyways, guys, like I said, this is the Cyberpunk 2030 channel, and here we talk about everything collapse. The collapse of society. You know, it's funny how now all the intellectuals have a license to come out and start talking about the stuff that preppers and survivalists have been talking about for years. It's as if now and only now people have a reference point to understand these things. It's like as if before they just thought that these things never existed. And for intellectuals, that's not a good thing when you cannot understand something so rudimentary, so basic. The fact that we stand on a very thin veneer of civility under a sea of chaos and primitive human emotion, all of the errors we know we're making as a society have to have some kind of consequences. You know, we always push that back, and tacitly we presume that it's always going to be somewhere out there in the future that this is going to happen. But we're starting to see that it's happening now. Okay, that the system is coming undone right now before our eyes. Now, let's talk about, I wanted to talk about this whole DNC nonsense right now, and the whole Democrat party strategy right now. Because we got to talk about political season, because I do believe there is a class war coming. I do believe that the conditions are ripe for a class war. Did you guys know that in the year 2020, the top 12 billionaires added a combined net worth of $1 trillion? This coming at a time where millions of people have been put out of work, millions of people have had to go into new lines of work, millions have now had to live on lesser wages, have had to dig into their savings, and in spite of the magical stock market bubble, which seems to inflate to no end, the majority of Main Street is not looking good right now. There's a lot of people who've been put out, and there's going to be a lot of angry people once the benefits stop, which they are pretty much on the brink of stopping. Right now, they're debating sending out some more stimulus, and they better do it, because if they don't, there's going to be riots in the streets. Once people realize what has happened here this year, once people realize the wealth transfer that has occurred, with not only the addition of $1 trillion of wealth onto the richest people in North America, but also with once these quantitative easing measures are realized, and once people realize that, oh, we have to pay this money back, yes, and once the actual inflation of the money supply, once the actual price inflation catches up to that, and then people realize that their dollar isn't going to buy as much as it used to, and once the countries of the world start to abandon the US dollar, that's when people are going to be really, really upset. And that's why I think the powers that be, if there is such a thing, need an authoritarian president to come in and crack down on the masses. Which is why I think the DNC is putting on this cringe fest and throwing this Hail Mary of a candidate out there to the people, Joe Biden, who can barely talk, to try to lose the election. It's like they're trying to throw the fight. It's as if they know that it's only going to get worse and, might as well pin that on Trump's legacy. That's kind of what it seems like is happening right now. Like, it seems like they've literally either lost their minds, either their marketing teams and their public relations people have no clue as to the pulse of the internet right now. Because on every single video, even on the videos where you would think that the majority would respect Biden, they don't. And I know it's a large part of it is an army of millennials who are more vocal than the older generation and Generation X and the boomer generation. But it's not just that, okay? It's the fact that Biden is out of touch with not only reality, in the sense that I don't see him being able to string together a sentence ad-lib without screwing it up and making himself look like a fool or insulting somebody, insulting his base. The fact is that he's just simply not a charismatic enough candidate to derail the Trump train right now, especially if the economy is good. So it seems to me that they're trying to throw the election. I mean, I can't think of any other reasoning for why they could be that stupid to attempt to use the same strategy that lost them the last election. You would think that they would throw out another Hail Mary. At least with Obama, they were taking a chance on something different. Okay, this time they went back to the stalest type of political approach they possibly could, and it's going to lose them the election probably. And I think that the powers that be want Trump to go in there because he's the pro-police guy, and so is Kamala, by the way. And she's kind of the fail-safe, so if and when Biden decides to forfeit, she will be the incumbent. And if Biden wins, because there is an argument to be made that Biden's a more familiar name, therefore they think that people are going to vote for him. The older, more corporate Democrat, moderate Democrats are going to vote for Biden. Perhaps they did some focus groups and it was decided that, oh, the most people are still going to vote for Biden in spite of the fact that he can't tie his own shoelace. And in spite of the fact that he probably can't go to the washroom on his own. Oh my God. I feel sorry for the guy. I really do in some ways, because watching some of these videos of him trying to get a story out, tell a story, it's like watching Abe Simpson in the nursing home. And I'm not being ageist because, John McCain was put together and he was the same age. Well, actually, I think he was a little younger. But I can just not see Biden in the White House in 4 years. I mean, that just does not make sense. Never mind 8 years. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So what they're probably going to do is, if he wins by some stroke of luck on his basis of his name alone, Kamala's going to step in there and she's going to finish the job. She's going to be the one who brings the hammer down on all of the rioters and protesters that are going to be coming out of the woodwork when they realize how fucked over they've been. Now, as for Donald Trump, I think that there's some things that he's gotten wrong, and there's some things that he's done right. I think what he's got wrong is, obviously in his handling of the COVID situation, he's not a PR guy, he's a wild card guy. He's an agent of chaos, he's the Joker, okay? He's going to take risks. And this was one of those situations where he should have zigged when he should have zagged. But to his credit, I've always said on this channel that regardless of who's in power in the United States, this pandemic would have went down like it did. It would have went down just like it did because it's a, dare I say, systemic problem within the North American culture. The situations that caused it to spread so quickly are a North American problem. We are not a Chinese society who knew from the get-go that masks were effective in stopping the spread of a virus. This is something that Canadian Prepper talked about basically when this was starting to kick off, and the Surgeon General saying, no, they don't work. Even though Asian countries have been doing this for decades, not only to prevent the spread of pathogens, but just to protect them from air pollution. So we know that they work. We know that they help limit the spread, but the people here are so divided over the issue. And because of the political issue and because of probably a lot of foreign internet hacking and meddling, the situation went foobar, and of course people took to the streets, and that's when the problem just exploded exponentially. So Trump is going to have a shitstorm on his hands when the working class realizes how screwed over they've been, and this whole George Floyd thing, that was just a primer, okay? That was just a reignition of the masses to pressure test the people and pressure test the system. That got people woken up a little bit. And what's going to happen now is that little warm-up is finally going to have preceded the real conflict, which is going to be a class conflict. And I can tell you that a class riot is much different than a race riot. I believe that if nothing is done to bridge that wealth gap, there is going to be chaos in the streets. Now, I need to clarify from the get-go, people have probably already hung up the phone, that I'm a free market guy. I'm an entrepreneur. I have a business, okay? I think that the free market is not a perfect system by any stretch of the means, and I think that at some point, I've actually heard it best say that in a communist system, power is concentrated in the same way as it is in a capitalist system. In a capitalist system, it just takes longer. And I think we've seen that now with these billionaires and their wealth going parabolic while everybody else scrambles. And you can make the case that right now, it's merely the result of a consolidation of power. So it's that all the little guys have been squeezed out, all the small business owners have been squeezed out, and the New World Kings, like Jeff Bezos, who now has a net worth of almost $200 billion after a divorce, that's insane, is likely going to be the first trillionaire. That's where this is heading. If Amazon decides to do a 10-to-1 stock split or something like that, watch out. Because Bezos' net worth is going to go through the roof once again. But people are going to be mad. People are not going to like this once they realize what has happened here. And they will, eventually. And unfortunately, that movement, whatever shape it takes, will be commandeered by somebody or something. And right around the election time, if it's a close race, that's going to just be fuel to the fire. If George Floyd's persecutor is not prosecuted in the fashion that the majority approves of, or the masses approve of, the shit's going to hit the fan. If there's a second wave and we got to go into lockdowns again, the shit's going to hit the fan. If these wildfires continue, if there are food shortages, the shit's going to hit. Who are we kidding? The shit has hit the fan. The fan is covered in shit. And so is the room. And it's just a perpetual shit hitting the fan at this point. Now, in terms of this money situation and the economy, we know that the bubble has to burst at some point. We know this, guys. This is fantasy land right now. If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it doesn't matter how long you think it's not a duck. It's going to be a duck at some point. That's got to become apparent. It's going to come into focus soon. That what has happened here with the economy. And it's going to be very reminiscent of the tech bubble in the year 2000. Because at that time, nobody could explain, asides all the hype and the speculative nature of the markets, why the markets were going up like they were. And this is why. It's a hype train. These companies are very overvalued. And unless they start paying more taxes or providing people with more jobs, the shit's going to hit the fan. And if people don't have money to buy their products, there's going to be a few bad quarters. And yeah, the prices are going to collapse. Now, however, getting back to this whole price inflation thing, because this has been a thesis of mine for the last few months, that it would seem that a lot of this inflation is being time released into the market and being time released into the economy, the real economy, I should say, from the stock market that is holding everybody's money right now. Don't underestimate the power of the retail investor in this market. I know the institutions are the ones that largely move the needles. These institutional investors with their big money, they largely move the needle, but do not underestimate the retail investor who has nothing better to do right now, because all the casinos are closed, than to play the stock markets and to inflate these markets. Now, if Trump can keep the markets up until election day, he will be reelected. In my opinion, I think that that's almost inevitable at this point. It really does seem like the DNC wants to throw this election. They've thrown all of their millennials under the bus. They threw the Young Turks under the bus. They told Bernie to take a hike. They told Yang to take a hike. All of their grassroots younger supporters are completely disenfranchised right now and demoralized. And they're pissed off. And they are starting to, you can see it, they're starting to look for somebody else to vote for. And I really do think that the inklings of a third party, a true third party, not one which is just a Ralph Nader type spin-off, or what was that other guy's name, Ross Perot? Not one which is just a more extreme form of left or right, but an actual third party which represents some of the interests of both sides who feel demoralized right now with the current candidates that they have to choose from. Of all the frickin' people that you could have put up there, out of 300 million people, you choose that guy. People are upset. The Kyle Kalinskis, the Jimmy Dores, the Rational Nationals, all these progressive podcasters, they are pissed that this is what they got. After all the work they've tried to do over the last 4 years, they are upset. And I mean, the writing's on the wall. I mean, Joe Rogan leaving California seems like a trivial thing. And in some cases it is. I mean, who the hell cares? But it really isn't. Elon Musk building a factory in Texas, Rogan leaving California, the end of Hollywood, possibly. I mean, right now, they got virtual people in the stands at NBA games. I mean, they're doing whatever they can to keep the facade going. Keep the people entertained with bread and circuses while Rome burns. Literally. It's crazy what's going on right now. But the stock market is going up, so all is okay. And that's the thing. A lot of people right now are invested in the markets because it's easier than ever before to invest. So as long as they see that those stocks going up, in their minds, maybe there might be some supply chain disruptions. Maybe your neighbor's house is burning down. Maybe COVID is spreading like wildfire. Oh, and by the way, we do believe that the COVID thing is real on this channel. I know some of you think that you have intel which says otherwise. We just go by the science, okay? We've been calling for a pandemic for years. I mean, everybody's been predicting that this is going to happen. It's not just Bill Gates. Everybody has been predicting it's going to happen. Every single epidemiologist has been saying that this is inevitable. So now that it's here, people are acting like it's not real? Come on. I'm not saying it's the end of the world, but it's sure a good start. So anyways, we talk about prepping on the other channel. So that's our more solution-focused channel. And we got a lot of content coming on that channel. But this, I needed a forum to just freely express myself. Because as much as I like doing the Canadian Prepper videos, I am trying to cater to a more universal audience there. And that sometimes requires me to bracket my opinions about certain things. So I do think that the current market fantasy, it has to come to a head at some point. I know a lot of people they don't know what to think because they see the stock market going from 18,000 when the Dow hit its bottom to whatever it is right now, 28,000. It may well go over 30,000 within the next month. It could. It's possible. But remember what that is. That's not real. That's not real money. That's inflated money or speculation. That's all it is. It's people buying the hype. It's not reflective of what's actually out there because, like I said, all of these companies are overvalued. The companies that remain, that the last 12 companies that really exist and are really carrying the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ, they're all hyperinflated, in my opinion. Maybe not hyperinflated, but it's getting there. It's getting to that point. So don't just assume that this is going to continue forever because it has to come to an end at some point. And right now, everybody's just, pie in the sky and thinking that they see their bank accounts going up, at least some of them. Half the people anyways who have money in the markets, they see their bank accounts rising and they're just telling themselves, well, what are all these doomsayers? They don't know anything. Well, we only have to be right once for us to seem like Nostradamus. Enjoy these last days of summer, guys. That's all I'm going to say. Enjoy these last days of summer because shit's really going to start to heat up after summer. As ironic as that sounds. Things are going to get crazy here in the fall, I do believe, as all of these factors coalesce into a shitstorm, the likes of which we probably have never seen before. If you ask me, the establishment wants Trump in there because they know the shit's going to hit the fan. And they need somebody to crack down on the masses with a iron fist, with an authoritarian martial law police state like iron fist. Because the riots that are going to follow when people finally realize that we were in a what they call a dead cat bounce market, and when then that sucker starts going down, look out. Because that whole Wall Street protest we seen in 2008, that's going to seem like child's play compared to what's coming. And they want a guy in there who's willing to go to bat for the police. They're going to want somebody in there who's willing to crack down on protesters. And it's going to be just like that movie, The Running Man. Actually, it's going to be a combination of 3 movies. It's going to be The Running Man, it's going to be Elysium, and it's going to be Judge Dredd, all wrapped into one. All of that goodness, that totalitarian, technocracy, dystopian goodness, all of that wrapped into one. And that's why Cyberpunk 2030. Oh, yeah, that's right. We're changing the name because that asshole who decided to buy up the domain. Hence the term cyberpunk. The cyberpunk subculture was birthed of this idea that in the future, at some point in the future, there's going to be such an oppressive technopoly which emerges that there's going to be this lawless fringe punk-like group which tries to maintain some of their liberty by standing outside the system. That's what the cyberpunk mentality was. And it looks like we are fast approaching that. It looks like there's a few options that the future has provided us. Full-blown shit hits the fan or collapse. Complete regression towards the mean, which is basically hunter-gathering. That's probably a bit exaggerated. But the other option is that we have this society which is advanced technologically, but it's oppressive. And it's like a mixture of a Brave New World and the Orwellian world, where on the one hand, there's a lot of people who are just amusing themselves to death. I don't know if you guys have been on TikTok at all. I have my audience, I think the average age is around 35 or so. I'm not sure if you guys have tried this TikTok thing. Man, that is like the crack cocaine of social media. I tried it because I wanted to see what all the fuss was about. And my God, I can understand this. That is really, you know, they talk about kids struggling with ADHD nowadays and short attention spans. That is the absolute worst thing that could ever happen to kids like that. And I can't see where this is going. I can't see where it's going to end, because it just seems like there's just so much information now. And I think that's why this whole push for Neuralink and putting, electrodes in your brain so you can just hardwire this shit right to your brain, because there's just so much stuff. There's so many distractions. There is, you could not have asked for a better recipe for a dystopian society, because you have a world of distractions to keep people busy, virtual distractions, to take their eyes off the fact that, it's pretty ugly out there on the actual main street, in the economy. It's pretty ugly out there. As long as people have these distractions, like TikTok, they're probably going to be less likely to get out there and organize and demand some change happen. So you could have not have asked for a better perfect storm of events. So anyways, I'm just shooting from the hip with these videos, these what's looking to be like more of a podcast type format. I have no guidelines to follow. I got to get a studio. I got to get my shit together here, guys. I just got so much on the go right now. The Canadian Preparedness.com store has been very busy lately as people are preparing for the fall. If you don't know, we sell very, very high quality preparedness products here. My goal with that channel is to get people stuff which is going to last, so they're not cursing out my name when they actually need it in a real SHTF scenario. So we only sell quality products over there, because I found that there's so many, there are a lot of sharks in the industry who are trying to take advantage of people. But and unfortunately what happens is that the people who tried to do it well and try to get people what they actually need and try to do a good job of things are the ones that get demonized by people who have no idea what they're talking about. Hence my review of that book by Bradley Garrett called Bunker. You can go check him out on the Joe Rogan podcast, where he basically completely mischaracterizes the industry, in my opinion, but I've already done a video on that, so you can go and check it out. But I would say that the time to stock up, the smart money comes in now. If you can see what I'm talking about, then the smart money starts now. By smart money, I mean the people who are going out and getting prepared right now while the getting's good and the prices are low. So there's a lot of ways you can prep on the cheap. You don't have to go through CanadianPreparedness.com. I would discourage people from shopping at my store if they're on a budget, because you can go down to Wally World and pick yourself up, make yourself a bug out bag for $100, which will function just fine for a short period of time. It's not going to last, mind you. That's the thing. It's going to be a single serving, just like TikTok. You know, everything's single serving. Was that Fight Club Brad Pitt quote? You know, or was that Edward Norton? Something about everything in his life is a single serving. That's the nature of the world we're living in, guys. Single serving everything, disposable everything. And a disposable society as a whole. Disposable economic system. Disposable elections. Disposable everything. Okay, I got to get going here. But once again, I want to send my... I don't like sending my prayers because I'm not really religious. But for lack of better terms, I'm just going to say, California, I'm thinking about you. I really hope that things improve. I hope that the wildfires don't destroy the entire state, because right now it's looking like it's going to be a record-breaking year. I hope that we can get this COVID thing, get a handle on it. I hope that there's not a second wave. I hope the economy doesn't collapse. I hope we don't go to war with China. Okay, I hope another shitstorm doesn't start in the Middle East due to the low oil prices. But chances are all those things are going to happen. So get ready, folks. Stay tuned for next time. Cyberpunk out.